Breakup movies can be real hard work to watch. Think Marriage Story or Kramer versus Kramer. Devastating, dreary, depressing. But two new movies in theaters right now want you to know, hey, divorce can be funny. Today we're talking about Splitsville and The Roses and why movies about breaking up are lightening up. I'm Amil Niazi sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. I have Rad Simonpillai, Hertz and Haley Mlotek. Welcome to the group chat, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
With this fun stuff.
Hi.
Yes, talking about divorce. Who doesn't want to talk about a little teary eye, a little splitting of the assets? Haley, you wrote a memoir about your own divorce. You even made a film festival called the Divorced Women's Film Festival. Great title, gets right to the point. All to say, this is familiar territory for you. You know, you have done a lot of thinking about not just divorce, but like culturally where divorce sits in our conversation about relationships. So, you know, unlike a movie about love and marriage, what does a divorce movie do for us as a viewer?
I think divorce movies have a really fascinating chance to do what most movies that reach a wide audience do, which is both react to and reflect the popular or mainstream culture as it's working its way into the audience's lives and the filmmakers' lives. In my book, one of my favorite quotes that I have is from a researcher who says, once we know enough to question our norms, that's a sign that they've lost their hold on us. Mm-hmm. And you can often see that in movies. You know, Kramer versus Kramer is this wonderful example. Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice was an example about these characters who represent being caught in between these like major cultural transition points. And so, yeah, like you say, right now, there are these two movies in theaters that show how funny it is. But if you go back to like the remarriage comedies of the Hays Code era, a lot of that was reacting to how ridiculous the circumstances of trying to get divorced in the Depression was. You know, like things were very serious, but there were lots of reasons to make a joke about it.
And like, you know, thinking of you programming this film festival, what do you as a viewer get out of, like specifically, you know, whether it's going through your own divorce or just thinking about what someone in that situation would want to get out of a movie? Like, what do you take from a divorce movie?
The Divorce Women's Film Festival really was such a joke I made that just became so serious because when I was separated and getting divorced, I really was essentially handing my friends a syllabus of divorce movies that they should watch. Yeah. And I still do that. I love giving out movie recommendations or assignments, really. But there is, for I think a certain type of person, you know, a lot that a book or a movie or a song can do to communicate something that is very difficult to put into words, or perhaps like you don't have the words yet. So being able to watch these movies like The Age of Innocence or Certified Copy or even Mrs. Doubtfire, you know, sometimes has a real resonance that can cut to the heart of things in a much faster amount of time.
I love that. It's like listening to sad songs when you're going through a breakup.
Totally.
Like you don't want to hear happy music because you want to imagine being in love. You want to be in the moment. So we're mentioning like divorce is such a tough time in people's lives, but these two new films in particular want to show you that it can also be fun. We are going to start with Splitsville. This is a moment from the movie where Carrie, played by Kyle Marvin, finds out his wife wants a divorce, and then he also learns that his friends are in an open relationship. He has some questions. Let's take a listen.
What if it's someone you know?
I don't care who it is.
Really?
Yeah, why would I care? I'm like a self-realized individual. You two could have sex, it wouldn't bother me.
Wow. Well, with that gleaming endorsement, let me just saddle up over here.
Whoa. Take it easy. Look at this. I'm a horse. Giddy up.
You kind of are. I saw you in the shower.
Oh, hey, quick question. What's a horse's favorite wine?
What?
Chardonnay.
That is not funny.
Chardonnay.
Are you not embarrassed for yourself?
Don't be jealous, baby.
Rad, I saw you smirking. Why did this movie work for you?
I mean, I think it's just laugh out loud hilarious, right? This is kind of fun, absurd comedy that gets really chaotic, and the movie's about like these two couples that are basically exploring different situationships even among themselves, getting tangled and all that stuff. And far from being a movie that is actually, I think, authentic to kind of real relationships as we experience it. Yeah. It's a kind of movie that I think it has these characters who act on the thoughts that we might entertain or like we might fantasize about, but we would never actually consider acting on them because of how chaotic and riotous the situation would be and how much it would destroy our lives. And that's what this movie does. It's all about the chaos. It's all about the riot that happens when these characters choose to act on their impulses. And I thought, it was really fun, but also really frothy in that way. It's not the kind of movie that I would say like is going to really give you something kind of thoughtful or insightful about modern relationships, because there's aspects of it that I didn't really buy, especially when it comes to like the women characters in a movie that's written and directed by men, where it feels like they're more like either objects of affection or objects of sexual frustration that the men are reacting to. I think the actresses though, Adriana Arjona and Dakota Johnson, do an incredible job of making more of that. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a movie that I kind of felt like it's like a fling. It's not one that I would take too seriously.
Okay, it's your divorce id, if you will. Barry, I love to set you up like this. You're a film critic who's also gotten divorced.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So I think this is a group chat / support group.
Exactly. What did you think of Splitsville?
I mostly agree with Rad. I mean, I found it hilarious. I thought it was one of the funniest movies I've seen in a long, long time. Just deep, sustained laughter. And I feel like the divorce element is kind of there, certainly, in the situationship and the way that these characters kind of mix and match their partners and are going through all kinds of emotional trauma at the same time. But I found it to be, and to that point, it is more a movie about male relationships. It's about two men who are on opposite sides of each other on the socioeconomic scale, on ostensible happiness, and then they find that the scales have been tipped in the exact opposite direction, and they have to reckon with that. And it's true, the women are objects of desire or obstacles that need to be overcome, and there are great performances in there, but it is a male bonding kind of movie.
Well, given what they've just said, Haley, as resident divorce lady, we have to get to your perspective on this. Like, what if you're watching this, are you imagining yourself like really rooting for the guys here, or how does this film hold up for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so much said and written about men and loneliness. So I definitely did also go into it primed to see it as a movie about friendship between men. And for that, it was wonderful and hilarious. I did, yeah, of course, I was sort of thinking that maybe the women in it were a little thin, but I'm also like, I love the way Dakota Johnson looks and the sound of her voice. I would also risk it all for her. That's not like a stretch. But something that I did find really fascinating about the movie that I liked, two things maybe, is that first of all, without giving anything away, the joke is really more that divorce is an option rather than the fact of it being something that's necessarily done. The question of the movie is it's not why break up, it's why stay together, which is, I think, the transitional moment that so many people are finding themselves in when divorce is widely accessible. But the other thing I really liked about it is the fact that it's sort of about how sensitive relationships are to friendships and communities and to social situations. A lot of these movies, and I say this very lovingly, but a lot of them act as heteronormative propaganda, that like ultimately tell people, no, it's worth it. It's a lot of work, but you want a husband or a wife. And you saw in this movie how the two relationships, like both of you were saying, they kind of act in a way to confirm each other or to, in their differences, show what maybe the other couple could try. And I think that's really true to life. I think that's basically the basis of every dinner party, is seeing what other couples are up to.
100%. And it's so interesting that you mention how sensitive relationships are to friendships, because I think sometimes when a divorce happens in a friend group, it's like divorce dominoes, right? You're either bringing your partner to that dinner party to be like, see, this is what I mean, or you're shielding them from that to be like, no, we're not getting divorced like those two over there. I'm Amil Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Today on Commotion, we are talking about movies that are having fun with the not so fun world of divorce. Now we're going to get into the other new comedy out right now, that is The Roses. This is a remake of the 1989 classic War of the Roses, which starred Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas. For some reason, I watched it a lot as a kid. We get into that trauma another time. This new version stars Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman. And this scene is from the beginning of the movie, where many couples who often contemplate divorce end up on a therapist's couch, listing the things that maybe they find frustrating about their partner. Let's take a listen.
1, I would rather live with her than a wolf.
Did you say wolf?
Yeah.
Wow. 1, he has arms. Well, I saw a documentary once about a man without arms, and it looked like a difficult life, particularly for the partner, so I like that he has arms.
Yes, fair.
Arms.
2, the shape of her head is somewhat pleasing at a distance. 3, I have memories of her being witty. 4, she smells pleasant on occasion. Actually, struggle to write anymore.
2, his breath smells like an anchovy that's been on the piss all night. 3, the way he laughs is like a diseased dog's death rattle. 4, he's a bad father, a f***ed lover, a complete dead shit, a victim, a loser, a wanker. Number 10, Theo, what a
Well, there you go, Haley. What do you make of that scene?
I also watched War of the Roses a lot as a kid, so that's very interesting. And I always thought of it as a movie that I liked very much, but I don't really enjoy watching now as an adult. And so I think with The Roses, I found it impressively unpleasant. I was really... Yeah, it really committed to, I think, a lot of the viciousness that the original had. I don't know about the satire being as successful. It's really a testament to how charming Olivia Colman is. But a lot of the ideas that are reflected here are they're very contemporary in a way that feels almost like too early for us to actually understand what they're trying to say about class and gender. Yeah, a lot of thoughts.
It's funny, just even juxtaposing those two different moments from those two films, Rad. It's like you can hear, even in the self-loathing from Splitsville, you still hear a certain lightness. I think a movie like this has to have an ability to poke fun at itself, to have the characters poke fun at themselves. But all that comes across in this scene from The Roses we just heard is like bitterness and toxicity. And I wonder, how you felt that The Roses handled this, because it two very impressive actors, maybe not handling it as well as Splitsville.
Yeah, I mean, I think the actors are actually really great. And, seeing Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman in this, I was almost like, man, they should be together more often, because they have this interesting warmth in their demeanor, but also something very venomous and sinister about their wit that comes through a lot.
That's just being British.
Yeah, maybe that is what it is, exactly. But yeah, I think there's it's interesting when you talk about that therapist scene, the marriage counseling scene, as you feel the viciousness of it and not the lightness of it. But I think that movie, it just doesn't land its jokes as well, because it was actually trying to be funny and there's an aspect of that. And I think there's a tonal problem with this movie where, to add to what Haley was saying, I mean, they make it contemporary. There's aspects of it that I think they try to make it more sensitive in ways and more responsive to how couples, hurt people, how couples are not being really empathetic to each other because of their bruised egos. I think on some ways this movie is trying to be more authentic to the pulse of what a modern relationship is and where the problems occur. But then you get to the premise of the movie, and that's always one is intruding on the other, because the premise of the movie is a divorce so hostile it turns homicidal, right? So you can't really buy it in this movie, where they're trying to be authentic to real relationships, but then also trying to be that. And in some ways, the original worked so well because there's a backwardness towards like kind of the gender dynamics
Yeah.
and towards and there's an aspect of it where you actually kind of loathe these characters and don't mind seeing them try to kill each other because you're kind of rooting for them to get it done.
Yeah.
So
Barry, what do you think that Splitsville is doing right? Because you all seem to really agree that for the most part that movie kind of nailed this formula, that The Roses maybe got wrong.
Well, Splitsville is funny. The
That
Roses
helps.
is not. I mean, the problem with The Roses is it's actually not vicious enough. The viciousness only comes through in the last quarter of the film, and the rest of it is kind of spent building it up as we kind of get to know this couple and get to know their struggles, and we really relate to them. And that's a good kind of movie if you're making a different kind of movie that's not based on the War of the Roses and not playing on that kind of venomous legacy. And then there's like a turn, and we're all of a sudden supposed to expect that these people want to kill each other. And the problem is that they've been defined pretty well as characters, not especially funny ones necessarily, but real people. And then they're surrounded by these cartoons. The Andy Samberg and Kate McKinnon characters are acting in a totally different movie. There's a lawyer played by Allison Janney who comes in like 3/4 of the way in and is like this aggressive bulldog, just again pulled from some other cartoon kind of thing.
the movie I would rather see though. All those characters existed in the movie I'd rather see.
I mean, they might belong in like the original War of the Roses. And this is something a little bit more human, which is fine if that's what you want to do, but that's not what they want to do, and that's not what they end up doing. And Splitsville operates in a very different tonal reality, and you just want to see what they're doing. There's interesting things going on. It's shot in a very interesting way. There's a fight scene in Splitsville that contains some of the most impressive stunt work I've seen in a movie in ages. Any movie, comedy, action, whatever. So you can tell that there's just a vision behind it. And there's no vision behind this other than, hey, we have the rights to the War of the Roses. And today's audiences love Michael Keaton and Kathleen Turner legacy remakes or something.
Michael Douglas, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. So, yeah, I just didn't see the point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess except for Haley and I, who have seen it many, many times, who is begging for a War of the Roses remake?
I was legitimately shocked when I found out they were doing it. I was like, how are they going to do this in 2025 because of everything we're saying? Like, it's not nostalgia for a time that we want to bring back. Exactly. It's a humor about watching something that's so far away.
Yeah, that feels, tonally like maybe it wasn't hitting the mark. But Haley, we do have these two comedies about splitting up coming out within days of each other. So obviously there is a moment happening. You know, your memoir also seemed to sort of touch on this idea of the end of marriage. So what does it say about the moment that we're living in, that this feels like such a right time for a slew of divorce comedies?
I definitely do think it's true that there's a pattern or even a trend that you could see right now. I'm really lucky to have my book be in the company of so many other novels and memoirs and reported books about divorce. But I also think it's the type of thing where it is so common and ordinary to a lot of people's lives that you could sort of squint at any point of a movie release moment or like books coming out on the market and see a lot of recognizable elements. What I think we're witnessing right now is a lot of people realizing that divorce doesn't have to be an event in a story. It is the story itself. And it's more that used to be the rare object, and now it's just becoming a little bit more prevalent.
I mean, Rad, what's your sense of this idea that we're in a divorce moment right now?
Well, I wanted to latch on to something Haley said earlier that got me thinking. She was talking about like the depression divorce comedies of Hollywood, which in some ways this moment kind of harkens back to. Also, you think of a movie like Divorce Italian Style, which was coming at a kind of a shifting social moment in Italy. And so when you think of this moment, I just wonder how much the pandemic is playing a role in this in terms of like what we're craving, because, you mentioned off the top Marriage Story.
Yeah.
That movie came out right as the pandemic was hitting, and it became this online meme where, Adam Driver punching a wall, those moments felt like they spoke to everyone who are now all of a sudden locked up with their significant others and were maybe getting sick of each other.
Yeah.
Right? So I wonder how much, this moment where you have these two comedic movies, it's the comic relief we needed coming out the other end of the pandemic and maybe looking for an alternative to something like Marriage Story, which was a very dominant divorce movie in the last few years.
And I liked, Haley, what you said about that, it's not necessarily about divorce either. It's sort of about why people stay together. So in some respects, like, it ends up being a love story again. Does that sound like I'm at all in the right vein?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, another piece of research that I found really fascinating but didn't make it into my book, and I did end up writing about it later, is that a lot of researchers believe that the divorce rates really don't say anything about how people feel about marriage. The rates of remarriage are what we should be looking to. And if you think about how many divorce movies really do hinge on, the love story that comes afterwards, or the making peace and reconciling, that's where we really see what the cultural understanding of what divorce is good for, like more solidifying our commitment to love and romance being a central feature in our family relationships, rather than perhaps the moral panic of, we can all get divorced, so we're all saying, like, screw it, and just, like, giving up on love.
Yeah, we're not giving up on love. Barry, you didn't give up on love.
No, I should mention I'm very happily remarried.
Adorable family.
Yeah. I love her. Love my kids. So I don't know. I kind of come back to the kind of element of catharsis of whether we watch these movies when we're going through a breakup or a situation and we find some kind of pleasure in them. And I don't know, watching, I can't imagine the poor soul out there in the current theater moment going to see The Roses after they just signed their divorce papers for like the worst weekend of their lives. I feel so bad for them. Please go see Splitsville instead, guys.
Well, that's a good recommendation. And I mean, that gives us a chance to talk about the divorce movie that you would send your newly divorcing friend to. What Rad's like, well, maybe not newly divorcing, but what is the divorce movie that you think really kind of sets the bar? Rad, I'll start with you.
You start with me? Look, I don't know about sets the bar or anything, but I'm just thinking, like, a divorce movie that really hit me hard 20 years ago was Squid and the Whale. Which, I'm bringing this up because, me and Barry are in the middle of the Toronto Film Festival. That was at the Toronto Film Festival 20 years ago. That's we were talking about Marriage Story earlier, same director, Noah Baumbach, and it's a movie about kids navigating a very messy divorce in a household where toxic masculinity runs, is very prevalent. And in a way, I bring that up because, again, I don't know that I want to send any newly divorced people to see this movie because there is a venom and a nastiness to that movie that can be brutalizing. But it's a movie that I am very curious to revisit now. I don't know how well it would have aged since then, but it was definitely one that had an impact on me and how I see kind of nuclear families and some of the airs we put on.
That's nice, Rad, actually. I would like to see it again, too. It's been a long time for me. Barry, what about you?
I think we can, I'm going to recommend Intolerable Cruelty, which I think any side of a divorced couple can watch because it's about the people we both hate more than each other, which is the lawyers. And the Coen brothers do a great job. George Clooney's charismatic self, Catherine Zeta-Jones, wonderful. So that's a movie that can bring divorced couples together for just a moment.
Is that when they're chefs?
No, it's when they're lawyers. They're divorce lawyers. Yeah. I think you're thinking of the Catherine Zeta-Jones, Aaron Eckhart movie,
That's
No
right.
Reservations, which I don't know if there's any divorce elements in that, and all I can see is the poster in my mind of them. Yeah. Although, bringing it back to the Michael Douglas question, Catherine Zeta-Jones, War of the Roses, Legacy.
Hey, and they got back together after a very public split, so, there's something there. Haley, what's your divorce pick?
I'm maybe going to cheat and give two, just depending on the mood of the person who's asking. Because, I think it depends. Like, Squid and the Whale, I know exactly what you mean. It's a tough watch, but it's so humane. I think, like, it might be reassuring to somebody who's really suffering. And so in that respect, I do often recommend An Unmarried Woman because it has every emotion that I think is possible to go through in the year immediately following a divorce. And then also just for like laughs per minute, I'm going to say His Girl Friday because that's one of my favorite movies and certainly one of my favorite divorce remarriage movies.
Well, this is great. You know what? I've actually had a lot of fun talking about divorce with you three, and that says something about our relationship now. Barry Hertz is the deputy arts editor and film editor at the Globe and Mail. Rad Simonpillai is a freelance film critic and regular here on Commotion. They were both with me here in Toronto. And Haley Mlotek's debut memoir is called No Fault, a memoir of romance and divorce, and she is in Montreal. Splitsville and The Roses are both out in theaters now. And that is it for Commotion this week. I am Amil Niazi in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Thanks for listening.